San Francisco, a city constantly in the news.
What's it like living here?
Lawless. Completely lawless. This is anarchy.
Every day, on average, 2 people die from a drugs overdose here.
It looks apocalyptic almost, like something you see out of a movie.
Walk one block, there are signs of improvement. Walk another, it is encampments and people in obvious crisis with seemingly no intervention at all.
An average of 74 car break-ins a day. That's what's reported in San Francisco, 74 a day.
And it's time that the reign of criminals who are destroying our city, it is time for it to come to an end.
This city has a minimum of 74 car break-ins a day, or roughly about 1 car break-in every 20 minutes. Parts of the city have become an open-air drug market, making it unsafe for children even to walk to school without a formal escort for protection. Accidental overdose deaths are up 41% this quarter from last year, with 200 deaths already reported from January to March of 2023. Homelessness in San Francisco is one of the biggest worries the city has currently, counting at least 20,000 people that experienced homelessness in the year 2022, and around 46% of that homeless population experience mental health battles, often untreated. Even with all that information though, we decided a few months ago to take our baby into the heart of San Francisco for a week of adventure and exploration. We have been shocked at how the city has changed us in the best way possible. Welcome to our San Francisco series.
We just made it to California and we got a Tesla for a rental.
You ready to ride, Ian? Bye-bye! Well, this is a cool experience. I feel like this is like a proper welcome to California. Our options at the rental company were between a Tesla or a pickup truck. Talk about being offered the stereotypical extremes right off the bat. At first, we thought that we might stand out in a red Tesla. But it turns out that red Teslas are super popular here, and at times it was actually difficult to figure out which red Tesla was ours, which I guess is why a rental company had it in the first place. It's just a normal car here, which is actually a really good segue into the point of this first episode. My goal is to just barely scrape the surface of San Francisco's story by showing you the map and a quick timeline of events that have made the city into what it is today. I'll include in the description below a list of some of my favorite sources I found that really helped me learn a deeper appreciation of the city's history. But my purpose here in this video is to just introduce you to one of the most unique cities I've ever explored in the United States. First off, I want you to imagine a specific individual. This guy is rich, really rich, like the 5th richest person in the world. Let's just say his everyday car is a red Tesla. By chance though, you and this person end up becoming roommates in university together. Once you get over your shock that you'll be rooming with one of the richest individuals in the world, you start to get to know this guy and trying to befriend him. You find out that he made his money originally by buying stock to a mine that struck rich. Then he wisely invested his new money in businesses and banks in order to double or triple his wealth. Once you two really start becoming friends, he shares with you his passion for helping people in need, and he invites you to join him at his weekly protests, charities, and soup kitchens, all that he has started. You are amazed at how much money he pours into helping individuals in need, and you really start to admire how generous and kind he is. As the year continues and you truly feel like the two of you are friends now, you start feeling confused. Your room is full of trash that he brings in and never cleans up. Some nights, he never comes back to the dorm room with no explanation as to where he's been. He frequently brings his friends into your shared space who smell bad and are loud and are disrespectful. Eventually, you get up your courage to address some of the issues you are having with how he is treating you and your space. But instead of showing signs of change, he whips out his checkbook and offers to pay for a professional cleaning service to clean your dorm room weekly. As you approach the end of the semester, you feel like you are going to hit a breaking point when he starts asking you daily to volunteer, give money, and join him in his passions when you're just desperately trying to study and make it through exams. But at last, you find yourself sitting in your last exam, finishing up your final essay, and you finally feel yourself relax and let go of a sigh that you didn't even know you were holding. You're on the phone with your parents who've hired a van to help you move your stuff out of your dorm room and back home for the summer when you walk into your dorm room. Empty. Everything is gone. Your laptop, your bedding, your espresso machine, your books, your memory drive, your car keys. You stand there with your mouth open for a few minutes when you hear your roommate's voice down the hall. You head his direction and calmly ask, "Hey, where is all my stuff?" He walks to the room, puts his hands on his hips, and shakes his head, saying, "I thought I made it clear to them to not come in here when I wasn't with them." Come to find out, he had given his key to those so-called friends, and now they had stolen everything. Though his face and his words showed anger, I knew by his body language that nothing could be done. The excuses started flying out of his mouth like they had been prepared in advance. He promised he wouldn't. I'm trying to help him out during a hard time. I wish there was something I could do to fix this. Maybe I should pay for an armed guard for my dorm room next year. Without a word, you turn around and leave. This is too much. There's too much baggage. He is such a nice guy, but living together is too costly, both emotionally and economically. If San Francisco was a person, this is him. Now, I know there are holes in that analogy, but for the purpose of introducing you to a city, specifically this city, I think it's so helpful to add a human element to the story. So many people see San Francisco in the news or in history books, but when we visited, we were amazed at how personal it all felt, which is something you just cannot get from news reports. The city is geographically really small, about 7 miles by 7 miles. It also is on the perfect peninsula for protecting a port and bay, which is why it has had such a long history with military involvement. Originally, the Native American tribes living there, and I really hope I'm not butchering this, but the Olons and the Coast Miwoks, really found the ideal land to live as far as protection goes. Spain came here originally in 1769 and used it as a military base and a port for trading goods. The U.S. annexed the city in 1848 along with all of California as part of the treaty that ended the Mexican War, which ended up being a very lucky timing for the states. Up until now, this was wild territory. Very few people were coming this far west unless they were military. But then the gold rush hit in 1849, only 1 year after the U.S. annexed the city and the state. The population of the city jumped almost overnight from less than 1,000 people to over 25,000 people. That is crazy, by the way. As the population boomed, banks were started, businesses were thriving, and the city struck rich. Partly from the gold and silver, but also partly from the commerce jump, as more people meant more money and more business. As part of the gold rush, many Chinese men were flocking into California from China, looking for work in the mid-1800s. Many of these immigrants faced racial stigma and danger to their lives, so they began grouping together for protection. San Francisco is the original and largest Chinatown outside of China. Chinatown is so important and integral to the city's growth, and I love it so much that I'm planning on it having its very own episode in this series. So I'll kind of just skim over it for now, but make sure to subscribe to this channel if you want to learn more about the original Chinatown. During this gold rush era in the late 1800s, San Francisco became one of the major trading ports and military bases on the West Coast. When we started exploring this city, I told Dayton that this this is the first city I've ever been to in the United States that has felt foreign to me. And apparently that has always been a thing for the city. Sailors who came during this time period named it the Barbary Coast, after ports from the actual Barbary Coast that is in northern Africa. Sailors said that the prostitutes, slave trafficking, drugs, and debauchery reminded them of when they were in ports in northern Africa, which I should add really quick, that is not the reason why I thought that this city felt like a different culture or a different country, but I think the city has become so unique that it doesn't really fit in with any culture or any country. And just so you know, if you're wondering, it even is an anomaly in the state of California. My friend who lives not even 4 hours away from San Francisco says that it is totally different culture and feeling than where she lives in Fresno. So San Francisco is unique and it's its own little subculture or country. And I think a lot of that has to do with its unique history. From 1900 to 1904, this became one of the only cities in America to have a bubonic plague outbreak, which was terrifying for the city as they scrambled to find answers and stop it spreading. Basically, think COVID, but way stricter quarantines. In 1906, the city suffered a massive earthquake, which basically destroyed most of the city and killed thousands of people. Very few buildings in the city now date prior 1906 for this exact reason, as the San Francisco that we know today really began to be built after that terrible disaster. During World War II, San Francisco became the main West Coast port for military action. This is also during the time where the military was dishonorably discharging any gay military personnel and would basically fire and leave them in San Francisco, which is how the city became a hub of liberal activism. This grew and escalated over the years to come and kind of exploded in the 1960s and 70s as the city took a strong stance against U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. It became a safe spot for unpopular political and moral views, and as a result became a birthplace of the hippie movement and political activism. In 1989, the city experienced another major earthquake, and interestingly enough, the chance of earthquakes there is why most of the city has relatively short buildings. The only area with really tall skyscrapers and other buildings is the business district, which felt like a completely different city than the west side of the city, which has a much flatter and less distinct skyline. GDP has ranked the city 5th by land area and 2nd by population. That means that this city is extremely rich. Shockingly, it even ranks above cities like Paris, London, and Singapore. It also is the 2nd most densely populated city in the US, only outranked by the one and only New York City. When you look at the map of San Francisco, there are similarities with New York City, which explains why it is such a densely populated city. First off, land is a scarcity. The fact this is a peninsula that guards a perfect bay for trading is also what makes land scarce if you want to live in the city. This also explains why housing prices in San Francisco are some of the most expensive in the country. You will easily be paying over $1 million for a very small and usually outdated studio apartment. Some of the most popular landmarks of the city include the Golden Gate Park, which I would say is comparable to New York City's Central Park. Land's End Lookout and these hiking trails have become extremely popular as they have some of the best outlooks over the Golden Gate Bridge. Presidio is actually a national park now, as historically it has always been a military base. Cool fact, San Francisco residents can become part of a housing lottery to try to live in the renovated military homes in the park. Talk about living in some beautiful locations surrounded by amazing history. On the east side of the city is where you'll find the business district, Chinatown, Mission District, and historical locations. Given endless time, one could deep dive into their own rich history and events. Here are some quick landmarks that are important to recognize on the map. Market Street here marks the division of two separate map builders if you see how the grids go separate ways. Now though, it's important to recognize as most things are referred to as south of Market or north of Market. Chinatown historically has been here since the beginning. Also attached to Chinatown has areas for Filipino immigrants as well as a smaller Japantown on the side. The Fisherman's Wharf on the top here is one of the most popular touristy locations, specifically Pier 39. At the end of Market Street is the Ferry Building, which is a massive hub for commuters that don't live in San Francisco but work here, as well as a massive farmers market for local restaurants. I'll end with pointing out the Twin Peaks, which are the two tallest hills in the city. This city is extremely hilly, so these tall peaks have become a popular area to go for a lookout over the city, which is difficult to do anywhere else. We didn't actually go there though, as locals actually were warning us against that area as it's targeted by thieves breaking into cars. We stayed in Union Square right here, which has a lot of hotels as its location is central to almost all of the landmarks we just mentioned. I'll also point out Tenderloin, which is the containment zone bordering Union Square. We drove through it on day one of our trip, which maybe wasn't the best decision ever, but whenever you hear about horrible drug epidemic and terrible levels of homelessness, this is the area that everyone is talking about. Thank you so much for watching this video. This was just a brief synopsis of the history, which hopefully will become a launching pad into the rest of the series as I explain things like safety in San Francisco, especially with the baby, as well as some of the historical favorite points of my own, like Chinatown and some others. So make sure to come back for the rest of the series, and hopefully this video is a really good launching pad so that way it makes more sense to you. And if you feel like this video helped introduce you to the city of San Francisco, make sure to give it a thumbs up. It was a whirlwind of a week visiting in the wildest of cities, and I cannot wait to show you the rest of our trip coming soon. Thank you so much for watching. If you are watching this exact spot, it means you made it to the very end of my movie, so thank you, and we will see you next time. Bye!